The early morning mist still hung in the air when the police arrived at the scene. Abike's body lay on the roadside, her once beautiful face now frozen in a grim expression of horror. The surrounding crowd murmured in shock, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. The body was covered with a white sheet, but it could not hide the grim reality of what had happened. The officers were quick and efficient, taking control of the situation, ushering onlookers away and preventing any further disturbance. With calm professionalism, the police carefully lifted Abike's body and placed it into the ambulance. The scene, now bereft of its crowd, was silent but heavy with the weight of tragedy. The investigation had already begun, and every officer knew that the case would be no easy task. Abike's death, like a ripple in a pond, would spread far beyond this quiet street. Questions had already begun to swell. Who had done this? Why? And most importantly, how had this beautiful young woman ended up like this? The ambulance drove off toward the morgue, its siren now a distant echo in the streets. Within hours, the medical examiner began the process of documenting Abike's body. Bruising around her neck, a strange residue in her mouth, and traces of a potent drug in her bloodstream. It was obvious her private parts were missing. The details were chilling, and the police were now faced with an even darker mystery. Someone had taken Abike's life, and they needed to find out who and why. But from the look of things, it's now obvious it's for some kind of ritual. This would be a very heavy task. Investigation must begin immediately. A special officer named Agent Okoye was assigned for this task. He is known to be one of the best, if not the best, investigative officer in the States. The next day, Shade was summoned to the police station for questioning. She had been informed that Abike's body had been found, and immediately a wave of panic swept over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had been lurking behind Abike's recent change in behavior. Abike had become a distant, secretive, and Shade had noticed her friend spending more time with a mysterious man. But she didn't know the man's name or what exactly had been going on between them. She was consumed by guilt. Had she missed something? Could she have prevented this? When Shade entered the interrogation room, the officers greeted her with a mixture of sympathy and professional detachment. She was seated across from Detective Okoye, a seasoned investigator who had dealt with his fair share of complicated cases. He wasted no time in asking the question that weighed on everyone's mind. Shade, we need to know where Abike went the night she died, Detective Okoye said, his voice calm but firm. Did she tell you anything about her plans? Did she mention a man she was meeting? Please, open up. Tell me everything you know. Don't hide anything if you really care about your friend. Shade swallowed hard. She wanted to speak, to tell them everything, but the truth was, she didn't know much. Abike had been distant, and though she knew her friend had been seeing someone, Abike had never mentioned his name or what they had been doing. I don't know much, sir. She didn't tell me where she was going. She just said she was meeting someone, but she didn't say who. She didn't even tell me when she would be back. She was secretive lately, and Shade paused, her voice breaking. I never thought it would end like this. Detective Okoye nodded, his eyes softened by the sympathy he felt for the grieving friend. He understood her pain, but his job was to uncover the truth. Do you know anything about a man named Emeka Waya? At the mention of the name, Shade froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She had heard of Emeka. He was the kind of man that commanded attention wherever he went. Wealthy, confident, and dangerous in a way that sent chills down her spine. Abike had been smitten by him, and Shade had never liked him. Something about Emeka felt off, but Abike had been so blinded by the allure of his money and lifestyle that she ignored all warning signs. Yes, I've heard of him. He's a Yahoo boy, an internet fraudster, they say. He's always in the clubs, flashing money around. I think Abike was seeing him, but she never told me much about him. Detective Okoye jotted down some notes. His face neutral but thoughtful. Thank you, Shade. We will need to follow up on this. Stay close, and if you remember anything else, let us know. You can go now. We will get back to you if we need your assistance. Shade nodded and stood up, her mind spinning with the implications of the conversation. Emeka Waya, could he be involved in Abike's death? Her gut told her something wasn't right, but the evidence was still too thin to make an accusation. Meanwhile, Emeka Waya was living in the lap of luxury. The money he had earned from his fraudulent dealings had transformed him into a figure of extreme wealth, and his lifestyle reflected that. He was constantly in the public eye at expensive restaurants, private clubs, and lavish parties. His success had given him a taste for more. He bought new cars, new houses, anything that he could flaunt to prove his dominance. But there was always an emptiness beneath the surface. Despite his riches, he was still driven by an insatiable hunger for more. Emeka's dealings were far more dangerous than anyone realized. He had been involved in several shady operations, and his true wealth came from illegal activities, internet fraud, money laundering, and as it was beginning to come to light, ritual killings. He had been using his wealth to buy protection, to make sure no one could touch him. But as Abike's death began to unravel, Emeka found himself in more danger than he could have ever imagined. Days passed, and the investigation into Abike's death began to pick up steam. Detective Okoye and his team discovered a witness who claimed to have seen Abike with Emeka Waya the night she died. The witness was a club goer who had seen the two of them together at the same club, drinking, laughing, and sharing intimate moments. This piece of evidence was a breakthrough. It was the confirmation they needed to pursue Emeka more aggressively. The next day, Emeka was invited to the police station for questioning. He arrived in his usual flamboyant style, wearing a designer suit and a smug grin on his face. He didn't think much of the summons, believing that his wealth and status would protect him from any trouble. After all, he had always been untouchable. In the interrogation room, Detective Okoye wasted no time. Emeka Waya, we have reason to believe that you were with Abike the night she died. Can you confirm this? Emeka scoffed, sitting back in his chair with an air of superiority. Abike, I don't know what you are talking about. I haven't seen her in over a week. I've been busy with business. The detective narrowed his eyes. Witnesses saw you together that night. Are you denying that? Emeka's expression faltered for a split second before he regained his composure. I'm telling you the truth. I don't know that girl. I've never seen her before in my life. And if I've seen her, then it's probably a one-night stand. Sometimes I carry girls from the club to satisfy my bed, and I pay them off in the morning. But that doesn't mean I know her. The police had no direct evidence linking him to the crime. But Emeka's words isn't straightforward. At first, he said he's not seen Abike in a week, but now he said he doesn't know her from anywhere. Suspicion grew, but Emeka made some contacts to the top officers whom instructed his immediate release, and despite their suspicion, they had to let him go. Before he left the station, Emeka slipped the officers a wad of cash. "I love how you guys operate," he said with a wink. "You are doing a great job. Keep it up." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, but they said nothing. Emeka left with the same smug smile, convinced that he had escaped once again. But the investigation didn't end there. Detective Okoye had one last card to play. He knew Emeka was hiding something. That night, the police decided to bring in one of their most skilled agents, Agent Angel. Angel was known within the police force as one of their most beautiful and capable secret agents. Her beauty was often her greatest weapon, and she had used it to infiltrate some of the most dangerous cycles. Angel was a master at gaining trust, and she had done it time and time again, seducing men with her charm and using her allure to gather vital information. Angel started stalking Emeka till he finally met her at a luxury shopping mall. Emeka, as expected, fell for Angel almost immediately. The first time they met at the mall, he was captivated by her beauty. Angel's deep sultry voice and the way she moved were irresistible. It wasn't long before Emeka approached her, offering to buy her a lunch. "Let's get to know each other better," he said with a grin, unaware that he was now the prey. Angel, of course, was more than willing to indulge him. They exchanged numbers and began meeting regularly. It didn't take long for Emeka to invite her to his house. He told her the same thing he had told Abike. "Come alone and make sure no one knows your whereabouts. I'm a very private person and I want us to enjoy ourselves, just you and I will take you to a place where you've never been before." Angel complied, knowing exactly what she had to do. Where he welcomed her with his usual charm, he offered her drinks and they began to talk. As Emeka went to the bedroom, Angel poured the drink away and replaced it with something of her own. When Emeka returned, Angel pretended to drink the cocktail. Emeka was very happy. His plans is working out as usual, but he didn't know what was coming for him. Within minutes, she began to feel the effects. Her vision blurred and her limbs grew heavy. She collapsed onto the sofa, feigning unconsciousness. Emeka was delighted. He saw this as his chance to continue his dark ritual. Just as he had done before, he began to move towards her, preparing to take her to his secret room, where he would perform the ritual. Emeka carried her in the secret room. Immediately they got to the room, Emeka opened the room full of darkness and magic powers. But just as he was about to start the sacrifice, he brought out a knife which he uses to butcher his victims. But all of a sudden, the room door suddenly burst open and a team of armed police officers flooded in, surrounding him from all sides. Emeka's eyes widened in disbelief. His body froze, his heart pounding in his chest. For the first time in years, he was caught off guard. "What's going on?" he stammered, his usually confident tone faltering. "You are under arrest, Emeka Waya." Detective Okoye's voice rang out clearly, authoritative and commanding, for the murder of Abike and several other heinous crimes. Emeka's gaze darted around the room, searching for an escape route, but there was nowhere to run. The police had been waiting for this moment for few weeks, and now the noose was tightening around him. The arrest had been swift and methodical, with Angel playing her role to perfection. Her ability to charm and manipulate had led to the moment of reckoning. "What are you talking about? You've got nothing on me," Emeka shouted, trying to shake off his shock and regain control of the situation. But his mind was spinning. The dollar bills he had bribed the police with, he had assumed they'd keep turning a blind eye. But now it was clear that the web was closing in. "You killed Abike," Detective Okoye said coldly, stepping forward, "and now we will make sure you will pay for every crime you've committed, for the countless lives you've ruined, for the destruction you've caused. It ends here." The police commenced a search throughout his house, and they found hundreds of phones, wallets, and other personal belongings of Emeka's victims, including that of Abike. Emeka could no longer deny the crime. He offered to buy off the police. "Please, you people are my guys. Please, we can settle this amicably. Please, officer, I will give you guys $100,000. Please, don't take me. Okay, I will make it 200,000, 500,000. Just tell me your price. Tell me what you want. I will give it." The police turned down his offer. So many lives has been taken by this young man. So many people, including Okoye, has been intimidated by Emeka with his blood money. Just few years back, Okoye's girlfriend left him because of Emeka Waya. So this seems like just a payback time. He's been on the police watch list for too long, and now it's time for justice. Emeka was arrested. As Emeka was cuffed and led out of his mansion, his mind raced. He had gotten away with so much for so long. Away, a step ahead of the law. Away, ready to use his wealth to buy freedom. But this time, his money, his power, his bravado, none of it could protect him. He had underestimated the police resolve as Angel's ability to bring him down. Emeka was taken to the police station, where he was placed in an interrogation room. Detective Okoye sat across from him, his expression unwavering. Emeka sat with his head in his hand. A feeling of helplessness settled over him. "You can't win this, Emeka," Okoye said calmly. "We have everything we need. You are not going to take your way out of this. You are going down." At first, Emeka remained silent, unwilling to admit anything. He had lived his entire life believing that he could escape any situation. But now, with his back against the wall, he couldn't deny the truth. Slowly, his defenses began to crumble. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Emeka muttered, almost to himself. She was just a distraction, just a way to pass the time. But she kept pushing, asking questions, demanding more, and I couldn't afford to have her ruin everything. "You mean Abike?" Detective Okoye pressed his voice like steel. Emeka's eyes lifted, his gaze meeting Okoye's for the first time since the arrest. "Yes, Abike, she was getting too close. She was asking about things she shouldn't have. She wanted to know too much about my business, about what I really do. She wanted money, more money than I was willing to give her." His voice strayed off, and the detective could see the guilt in his eyes now. Though Emeka wasn't yet fully ready to confess everything, the dark reality of his action was beginning to sink in. "I thought I could control her," Emeka continued, his words coming out in a rushed, fragmented way. "I gave her money. I bought her things, but she wanted more. She didn't understand the rules of this world. She thought she could just walk away with everything and leave me exposed." Detective Okoye leaned forward. "So you killed her?" Emeka swallowed hard, a shiver running through him. "Yes, I poisoned her drink. I didn't expect her to die, but when she passed out, I couldn't let her live. I had too much to lose. I didn't know who she had told. So how come her private parts were missing, including her kidney and her vital organs? It wasn't found. If it's just a misunderstanding and a poison." There was a long silence in the room. Detective Okoye sat back, processing the confession. He had suspected this all along, but hearing Emeka's words confirmed the darkest of their theories. But that wasn't the end of Emeka's crimes. Detective Okoye knew that Emeka's behavior was a pattern, a cycle of violence and deceit. It wasn't just Abike who had suffered. Angel, the beautiful undercover agent who had now played the private role in bringing him down. Emeka, even as he confessed, had started to piece things together. He realized that Angel's presence has been part of a plan. She had seduced him only to expose him. He had always prided himself on being able to control any situation, but this time he had been caught in his own trap. Detective Okoye knew this, and he wasn't about to let Emeka slip through his finger. They had to act quickly. Angel had been monitoring Emeka for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. But now, after the confession, she knew the danger was far from over. Emeka was a man on the edge, desperate to protect himself at any cost. She had put herself in harm's way for this, but she was ready. She had been trained for moments like this. After so much torture by the police, Emeka finally accepted and confessed that he uses the women's private parts for ritual and then sells their vital organs for more cash. On the day of Emeka's court hearing, Angel arrived in disguise. She was no longer the sultry, seductive woman that had lured him into his downfall. Now, she was an agent of justice, determined to make sure Emeka faced the consequences of his action. The courtroom was filled with tension as Emeka stood before the judge, awaiting sentencing. His wealth, his influence, and his smug demeanor seemed to convince him that he could once again escape, but this time the law had caught up with him. As the proceedings went on, Angel stood in the back of the room, watching intently. She had her eyes on Emeka, knowing that any attempt to escape now would be futile. And then, as the judge began to speak, Emeka made his move. He lunged toward a nearby guard, attempting to flee the courtroom. In the split second, Angel was on him. With one swift movement, she disarmed him and pinned him on the floor. Her training taking over in moments of intense clarity. "You are not going anywhere," she said, coldly, her voice devoid of emotions. Emeka struggled beneath her, but it was over. The police had surrounded him, and within minutes, he was back in custody, this time with no chance of escape. Emeka Waya's trial was a spectacle. The entire city of Enugu was captivated by the downfall of a man who had once seemed untouchable. The truth of his crime came to light, how he had used his wealth and charm to manipulate and deceive, how he had killed for profit and power. Abike's death was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. But it wasn't just Emeka who faced justice. Angel, the woman who had risked everything to expose him, was hailed as a hero. Her bravery and cunning had helped unravel the criminal empire that Emeka had built. And though she was celebrated, she remained humble, knowing that the true victory was not in the public acclaim, but in justice served. In the end, Emeka was sentenced to life in prison. His wealth and influence stripped away. His empire had crumbled, and he was left with nothing but the consequences of his actions. The money, the cars, the women, none of it mattered now. He had made his bed, and now he would lie in it.